And from The Athletic, it is our good friend, Eric Nehm. Eric, good morning. How are you today?
I'm lovely. It's a lovely morning here in Milwaukee.
That was as unconvincing as you've ever been. Uh, Take us through last night. Take us through you sitting in the press area at the far end of the court, opposite of where Giannis goes down. Sid and my seats were right nearby, not courtside, thankfully. And I saw him go down. I thought, oh my God, he just ruptured his Achilles. What were you thinking as this played out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly where your head goes, right? It's always what could be the worst possible thing with a non-contact injury, and that's exactly what you see, right? So, 3:40 left in the third quarter, Giannis running up the floor. He had just inbounded the ball to Damian Lillard, Lillard in front of him, and no one around Giannis, and he collapses at the left elbow of the Celtics basket, and Lillard keeps dribbling the ball up the floor, but the Bucks call a timeout, and then everyone goes to check on Giannis. And, as he's sitting there, not really moving, I think that's the one thing that goes through your head is, oh my gosh, did he just tear his Achilles? And obviously, as we found out this morning, as reported by our Shams Charania at the Athletic, that was not the case. This is going to be a calf strain for Giannis Antetokounmpo, and that'll obviously probably keep him out here for the rest of the regular season and a good little while here. But timelines for him are always difficult because, as he's shown before, he can be a bit superhuman in this regard, where you think you see him destroy his left knee in the Eastern Conference Finals in 2021, and then 6 days later, he's playing in Game 1 of the NBA Finals. So, I think undeniably best case scenario was it was not the Achilles, and that's what ended up happening. That is, what we've been able to report this morning. But you do still have to try to figure out, how long is this going to keep him out? And then on top of it, I think the last time you think about one of these injuries is 2019 when Kevin Durant had a calf strain, did it in the second round of the Western Conference playoffs, sat out the Western Conference Finals, comes back in Game 5 of the NBA Finals for the Warriors, and then tears his Achilles in that game, in that same leg. And that's the concern when you're talking about a calf strain. These are tricky injuries to try to come back from, and you have to be careful with them. And while the Bucks are always very careful, Giannis is also very good at being able to play through pain and being able to rehab injuries and do all those things. So it leads to what could end up being a pretty tricky situation here for the Bucks as the playoffs. The NBA playoffs start on April 20th. That doesn't necessarily mean the Bucks are going to have a game 10 days from now. It could be 11 days from now, depending on, how the bracket shakes out. But, you're looking at a playoffs less than 2 weeks away. And, calf strains for sure, even the slight ones tend to take guys out for 1 or 2 weeks. So we are going to continue to find out more and more about it and kind of see where Giannis's health is at as the Bucks approach the playoffs.
So, Eric, we saw somewhat during the season, and I think it was early March, that he was missing a game or two with Achilles tendonitis. There was other things. So that was another thing I thought of last night when I saw that. Who makes the call on this? Because Giannis, everybody knows Giannis is going to push to get out there. How do you balance, because that Kevin Durant injury that you just talked about is going to be on everybody's mind, how do you balance that? Because the Bucks, they have Giannis for a while. You don't want to have something like that happen. You want to be very cautious, but you also know you're not going to do anything if he doesn't play. How do you take that balance, and who makes that call on whether or not Giannis is going to play?
Yeah, it's become even more interesting, I would say, this season. I think it has always been a decision led by the Bucks sports science staff. It's headlined by Troy Flanagan, Suki Hobson, also part of it. One of the more well-respected staffs around the league. Someone that obviously Giannis has put a lot of trust in over the years, and the Bucks have put a lot of trust in over the years. And kind of how we'd always heard it was, Mike Budenholzer talking about, well, we're going to talk to the sports science staff. We're going to talk to Troy Flanagan. We're going to get it figured out with me, him, and John Horst. In this year, Doc Rivers talked about, the other day, Giannis was dealing with a left hamstring kind of issue, and he thought he saw him in the third quarter kind of pull up and grimace a little bit, and he said, after the game, I should have probably taken him out. I have eyes. I saw it, and you guys saw the same thing, and I should have taken him out, but the training staff said he was good to go, and Giannis said he wanted to keep playing, so that's what I kind of did, and that was kind of the first time where we had heard. It's not necessarily dissension, but there is not that same harmonious, kind of co-decision making that we've heard in the past. This was, Doc kind of saying, well, the trainer said he was good, so it's their decision. They're the people that are going to do it, and that has kind of been the line that Doc has taken now. That he's never going to make these decisions. It's always going to be the sports science staff, the training staff, and they're going to make those decisions. So I agree with you, Tausch. It's a really tough spot because you well know every player is always going to want to play. Every coach is always going to want every player to play. Doc joked the other night, if it was up to coaches, there'd never be any injuries because everyone would be fine and they would just play. So you do have to have a sports science staff that you trust and is going to look out for the best interests of that player. And I do think over the years when, you hear some of the stories from behind the scenes about the rigorous training exercises and, clearance protocols they put the players through, I think you can take some comfort in knowing that the Bucks aren't going to go about this lightly. They're not going to just put him back out there just because he says it. They're going to make him do all the tests that, make them feel comfortable that he can actually do that and not, risk even further injury. But it's just a scary situation, and there's no denying that.
Eric, I don't want to be negative Nelly, and we'll get to what they did with the lineup and what it might mean moving forward. But this does seem like, as one of my friends with the Bucks called it, the season from hell, the way things have played out in different ways. Is there any thought in your mind, not the Bucks' mind, in your mind, that what you've seen from watching this team throughout this season, and given the Kevin Durant parallels, which ran through my head right away too when I saw you report last night that the Bucks were saying it was a soleus? I learned a new muscle last night.
That is correct, a soleus strain.
I thought of Kevin Durant too. Is there any thought of, hey, this just ain't our year? We can't seem to figure it out. We're getting beat by bad teams. Maybe it would just be smart to be realistic and say, look, we're not winning the NBA title anyway. We should not put our franchise player at risk. Is there, in your mind, I'm sure Doc is not thinking this way, but in your mind, is it possible that would be the prudent thing for this team to do?
I tend to say no. I do understand where you're coming from. I do kind of get that general thought process. But I would also say at the same time, you look through kind of all of the different injuries and things that have occurred in the playoffs, around the playoffs, before the playoffs, in all the ways that those things have led to championships for teams. And I think you have to believe, like, okay, maybe things just go right for us. Maybe that's a thing that can work out. You look at the Toronto Raptors that had some injuries, and then it worked out where Kawhi Leonard was healthy in the playoffs, and they got through it. And then all of a sudden, they just managed to win a championship. And they got some injury luck in other places with Kevin Durant and things like that. And, you look at some of the injuries that happened to Trae Young, to James Harden, to Kyrie Irving during the Bucks championship run. And I just don't think when you're this close and you have the talent that you have, if Giannis is able to get back on the floor, there's a real chance that you have the best player in the series, in every playoff series that you have going forward this season. To me, that's not a situation where you can just punt. I just don't. I don't think that's how this organization has been built over the years. This is an organization that has always been focused on being in championship contention, giving themselves as many opportunities to do so as possible. And then I think ultimately you probably look at, while you will mention how bad they are against crummy teams, and I believe they have a 455 win percentage against teams under 500. Their win percentage against teams with a record over 500 is 650. They've beaten up on good teams all year long. They've shown the ability to compete against the best teams in the league. If you look at their starting five, or at least their previous starting five before last night, they're among the best in the league in net rating. You look at the trio, the big three of Giannis, Dame, and Chris, and all of a sudden that also has a plus 15 net rating on the season. They've been good when they've been together. So I think while there is the negative side of this, and the things that have brought Bucks fans down this year, and to be clear, there's plenty of that. There are plenty of reasons why you wouldn't be super optimistic. I do think there are still those other data points that would suggest that, okay, maybe when they get to the playoffs, they'll just start playing hard all the time, and they won't take games off against the Washington Wizards, because there's no Washington Wizards in the playoffs. Those teams don't exist in the playoffs. It's only good teams. And maybe this is just one of those teams that needs that. So I don't think you can be overly cautious here and just say, nah, you know what, it's not our year. We're snake bitten, and we're just not gonna press our luck. I just don't know if you can do that as an NBA franchise that's run themselves the way that the Bucks have run themselves over the last 6 seasons.
Talking with Eric Nehm from The Athletic. You can read his coverage of the Giannis injury and the Bucks' changes for last night's win over the Celtics at The Athletic. How am I supposed to look at last night's game? First of all, I've never seen so few free throws attempted in a game. I didn't really understand who was trying their hardest to win and who wasn't. The Bucks changed up their rotation and their lineup a little bit. Interpret for those that love the Bucks whether or not this was a step forward or really didn't mean a whole hell of a lot.
As someone who had to watch their last 4 games, that was a step forward last night. Even with the injury, that was a step forward, because it had been pretty rough for the last week. Jay Crowder used all sorts of expletives explaining it to us at shoot-around yesterday, and all of those expletives were correct. It was really, really bad basketball. So that was a step forward. I mean, I think when you look at kind of what they're trying to do, throughout this season, they have decided to start Malik Beasley. Malik Beasley started 75 games. He's had a career season. He's shooting 45% from the three-point line. It's really been impressive. But one thing I think everyone has kind of wondered throughout the season is you already have one offensive focus guard in Damian Lillard. That's been a big talking point as you've gone from an offensive first player, or you've gone to an offensive first player in Damian Lillard from a defensive first player in Drew Holiday. That's had an impact on the Bucks, but playing him with another offensive focus guard in Malik Beasley, I think at times has hurt their balance offensively. And I think defensively it's made it really hard. At the point of attack, they just haven't been very good as a perimeter defensive team the entire season. In bringing in Patrick Beverley, sometimes it might just be because Patrick Beverley is not a confident enough shooter with a torn ligament in his wrist that he's going to take the shot. But if he doesn't take the shot, that means they're getting to a second action. And this offense throughout the year, when they've been bad, it is because they've tried to do too much on their own. They've tried to do too much on the first action of the offensive possession and not gotten to the second side of the floor, and not gotten to the second action, and not kept the ball moving. And even if it is because he doesn't want to shoot because he's not confident enough, that means the Bucks are getting into a second action. And I just thought you saw in that first quarter the ball moving around the floor, going side to side, and Beverly connecting the four best players on the team in a way that when it gets to Malik Beasley, because he is such a good shooter, it's going up. And that's not Malik Beasley's fault. And that's not something that, necessarily you need to critique Malik Beasley for, because he's shooting 45% for the three-point line. It's a good look. You're just not getting those connective tissue plays. And I think Beverly helps do that offensively, and then obviously defensively, he has lost a step or two or maybe three over the years. But he's still physical. He still cares on that end, and he's still been given a lot of respect from the officials, and I think that can help out on that end. So I think last night was undeniably positive for the Bucks before the injury. After the injury, it's a little bit tougher to maybe see the sunshine, through the clouds, but I do think what you saw from them with the starting lineup change was a positive last night.
All right, Eric, before we let you go, if I'm asking you to predict, knowing everything you know, the 4 games before this and the injuries, the Bucks more likely to get knocked out in the first round or make it to the Eastern Conference Finals?
I think more likely to go to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think throughout this season, and this is, I guess, just something that I have to hold on to because I'm here in the city of Milwaukee and I go and watch every Bucks game. But the way in which people have discussed Giannis in his season has, to me, just been pretty disrespectful. You look at, and this doesn't solve everything, and this isn't exactly how the vote will go, but throughout the season, Tim Bontemps from ESPN does his straw poll of the MVP vote and what MVP voters, past and present, are thinking about this year's MVP race. And, you go through it, and there's times where 8 to 10 voters don't have Giannis in the top 5 of their MVP voting. And it's really hard for me to try to comprehend because I think this is maybe his most impressive season. He's put up the individual numbers. He's kept the Bucks afloat while all of the turmoil of this season has occurred. Damian Lillard coming in, trying to get adjusted and maybe not having the best season that he's ever had. Adrian Griffin coming in, not being a great coach, not being able to do the things that they've been so used to over the years. Giannis needing to take on a higher leadership role, needing to find ways for the Bucks to win while they're not being as good defensively, trying to do more defensively to help cover up for, the things that they're not doing well at the point of attack. Just everything that he's done, to me, has been incredibly impressive. And I think because of their struggles and because of that turmoil, it's gotten overlooked a little bit. And that has distracted from the fact that this dude is undeniably one of the 2 best players on the planet. Maybe 3 if you want to include Joel Embiid. We'll see what happens when he comes back from an injury. But this dude's right there with Jokic. And if you have that dude on your team, overwhelmingly, if you have the best player in a series, you are going to win that playoff series in the NBA. And I think, again, we'll have to see what level he can play at when he returns from this injury. But if he can be close to what he's been, the Bucks are going to have the best player in that series, and that suggests they're going to do well in the playoffs. So I would lean closer to an Eastern Conference Finals than a first-round exit.
All right, Eric, so you can get back to work on your coverage of the Bucks. Last question for me. Who misses we all, as beat writers, you and I have talked about this before, we all have our go-to guys on the team we cover. Who misses Drew Holiday most? The Bucks defense, Eric Nehm, the beat writer, or Sid? I'm trying to figure out because I think all of them miss him to varying degrees, and we're reminded of that. I saw him sit down in the front row of the seats with some season ticket holders last night. I saw him yucking it up with all of his former teammates. He was one of your go-to guys, right? Do they miss him, and do you miss him?
So Drew, I miss Drew's personality. Admittedly, and this won't play well on radio, he makes a lot of facial expressions when he talks. instead of using words, he'll just kind of like look at you sometimes, where he'll be like, the defense, and then he like looks at you side-eyed, and it's like, well, I can't write that. That's not a good description. It'd be great if you'd use some words, but that's part of Drew's infectious personality. So, for the inches that, I'm trying to fill up, he wasn't always the best for that, despite having a great personality and being a great guy. So I would lean towards the Bucks defense. The Bucks defense misses Drew the most. This defense could really use someone like that.
Yeah. I enjoyed watching him match up with Giannis on multiple occasions. I still don't think that's a great matchup for him as it was last night. Eric, you're a great matchup for us. We always appreciate your insights. Thanks for everything, buddy.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
That is Eric Nehm of The Athletic. You can read all of his stuff there, including his and Sham's coverage of the Bucks situation, which they did get a win last night, which was obviously much.
He's very optimistic.
He is
more
very
optimistic
positive.
than anybody I know.
Yeah.
He's more optimistic than anybody that I've talked to.